Hi everybody, welcome to Marvel Avengers Alliance here on G4G. I can't believe I'm doing another video on this, but stuff just keeps coming out. Today's background music will be linked in the description. It is from a program way back on my Commodore 64 called Swinth. It has to do with C64's chiptune music. And I got this on a magazine that was a monthly subscription that came on 5 1/4 inch diskettes called Lodestar. And I love searching YouTube for this thing because I had this on this one particular Lodestar monthly disc, and I used to love this thing so much. But alright, let's talk about supposedly what was planned during Season 3 for Marvel Avengers Alliance had the game continued. Now, I'm not going to get into the X-Files nature of this until the end of the video, so for this first part, we are going to take everything that we see basically at face value. So we are going to pretend for this first part that all this shit is real. So, here we go. For Season 3, Chapter 1, the reward hero was going to be Shang-Chi, and we would be dealing with alternate uniforms for Elektra. Probably a Shadowlands-looking uniform for her, which is really cool because Elektra is certainly one of those forgotten heroes in the game that nobody really dealt with anymore. However, as you saw in one of my last videos as the game was closing down, I had the ability to team her up with some people, mostly through the Shadow Walking ISO and also Mach. The reason why she was good with Mach is that because she caused internal bleeding on everything anyway, she was causing 2 stacks of internal bleeding with Mach. They were going to introduce Owl and Purple Man as villains, which is pretty cool. Next up we have Balder from Norse mythology. Vision, all new, all different, was going to be the alternate uniform, and we were going to be dealing with somebody named Ulick. Spectrum for Chapter 3, Queen Medusa as the alternate uniform for the challenge mode, and we were going to be dealing with Melter and Ghost, which of course some of you may have been familiar with over on Marvel Avengers Alliance 2 for Ghost. Now, Queen Medusa I find is interesting because this seems to be the only one of the Inhumans that is listed as having an alt, and her, of all people, who kind of was maybe underused compared to, say, Black Bolt and Thane and Gorgon. I mean, I think she was probably one of the lesser used Inhumans overall. So that's interesting. Next, we were getting Smasher, and we were going to get something called General Red Hulk. So that's going to be interesting, because when I think of General Red Hulk, I think of just simply General Thaddeus Ross. So what's that going to be about? I mean, it's like saying here's an alternate uniform for the Hulk. It's Bruce Banner. It's like, okay, what's he gonna do? But okay. The new villain there is going to be Living Laser, which is cool for me. That's always been somebody that I would have wanted in the game. I don't know why, but for some reason I fixate on that name from my old Marvel handbook, which was, I brought it out on the stream several times. This Marvel handbook was a list of heroes and villains for the Marvel game in the late 80s, late to mid 80s. That was kind of like Dungeons & Dragons, but with Marvel setting. Up next, we have Manifold as the reward. We would be dealing with a classic version of Falcon, and Mr. Hyde was going to be the villain. So Mr. Hyde we dealt with in MAA2, It's exactly what you would kind of expect. He was like Beast mixed with Harambe. And Falcon Classic, that could have possibly meant we would see the old red and white Coco Beware looking outfit for Falcon. And maybe he would have had his bird. So maybe one of his abilities would have been to summon that bird that he had. That could have been very interesting. Again, that's another character that I remember from that Marvel Handbook that I happened to fixate on. That Marvel Handbook was Eel through Mad Dog, E through M. So anybody who fit in those letters, I tend to remember pretty well. After that, we have Power Man. Then we have a Marvel Now version of Cyclops. And we get Rhino and Hobgoblin. Oh, man. Would I have loved Chapter 6? Something more for Cyclops, which is cool because it means at least they are not pretending the mutants just totally don't exist in the game. Although I find it interesting that he's already had a chapter skin, so that seems a little odd. But Rhino and Hobgoblin, like fucking yes. Just classic Spider-Man villain in Rhino, and you know, we've always dealt with Hobgoblin, and we've always dealt with Goblin. Now we would have gotten Hobgoblin. Awesome. Next up we have Nighthawk, and then we would have had an alt for Punisher. And the villain we would have been dealing with is Paladin. So again, Paladin was dealt with in Marvel Avengers Alliance 2. And alt for Punisher. Really interesting to see what they would have done there. It's called the Trench Coat, which I think has a reference to some of the more recent Netflix Marvel items. And of course, there have been trench coat variants of Punisher throughout the years, and Marvel Heroes has got one. That could have been cool, because Punisher is another one that fell by the wayside a little bit. You know, he's a fan favorite, but in the game he never translated into anything like stupidly amazing, even though people always try to work with him. Which reminds me, this information is gleaned from Agent AniDoe's Facebook, and he got it from somebody named Agent Sweeny, I believe. So that's the source for all this. I always have to give credit where credit is due, and this was taken from AniDoe, which was taken from Sweeny. So up next, Clara Prast, Hank Pym in his Yellow Jacket uniform, and Psycho Man is the villain. Cool for Pym. Good to see some love for him. He got his Yellow Jacket uniform in MAA2, and he has at least one alt over in Marvel Future Fight. And, you know, he's kind of forgotten about in the modern era, but he's an iconic character for the Avengers. And Wasp has enjoyed a little bit of a refuel in popularity recently. She was amazing in MA2. After the last Alliance tournament in MFF, people are realizing she's very strong over there. So that just kind of fits with the theme of the Pym Ant-Man universe getting some love recently. Up next, we have Justice. We have a Marvel Now version of Magneto and villains in Exodus and Omega Red. I would have loved 9. I don't know much about Justice. Marvel Now for Magneto would be cool. He's got some alternate uniforms over in Marvel Heroes. And I believe that is actually one of them. Hey, YouTube. What's the deal here? But Omega Red. My God. There we go. A little bit of a snag there. Omega fucking Red. Just, yes. So happy to see that. Why? Because to me, I mean, not only is this just a classic villain that we never have dealt with, but this is the early Marvel fighting games, like Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel versus Marvel. It's Omega Red. He goes right up there with original Spiral. You know, Fur in the Boots Spiral. It's just Psylocke with that side bolt that came out as the butterfly. Iceman, Iron Man with that big repulsion cannon that comes in, like, fills up the screen. I mean, this is just classic for me. And Silver Samurai, that's somebody else we absolutely needed to have dealt with in this game. I would have been so excited to see Omega Red. As much as I was Flag Smasher. Again, through that Eel Through Mad Dog book, I encountered Flag Smasher, and always, because, you know, I was much younger at the time, I always thought of Flag Smasher as fucking Space Ghost. And I always loved his outfit because of that. So when he finally got his 10-15 minutes of fame in MAA, I was so happy to see Flag Smasher in there. Up next, we would have had Darkhawk, an alt for Moon Knight, Marvel Now, which, not surprising, Moon Knight is very popular. We dealt with him early on in MAA, but then he went over to Marvel Heroes. He went over to Marvel Avengers Alliance-2 and MFF, so he's very popular right now. We would have had a villain in Black Swan. Up next, we would have gotten Power Princess, an uncanny version of Storm, and a villain of Whirlwind. Whirlwind did make an appearance in Marvel Avengers Alliance 2. More love for the mutants, which is great. Would have been very interesting to see if this would have given Storm back some of her power. She was very big in PvP in the early days, but she kind of faded out drastically. Then we would have gotten Machine Man, we would have gotten Marvel Now Iron Man, and then we would have had a villain in Graviton, which we know Marvel Avengers Alliance 2 was dealing with him. An alt for Iron Man doesn't really excite me. He's got so many, and he's in no power position at all. He enjoyed a decent amount of love in the ugly alt, which was Mark V, I believe, the one with the six-pack and the very old mask. He was a part of a group boss killer where he would just spam Unibeam, and as long as you kept his stamina up, like through Iron Fist or through consumables or the agent gear, not consumables on a group boss, but other than that, Iron Man has not really been on anybody's radar in a long time. For the PvP seasons that we would have maybe dealt with in the next year, we would have gotten Wiccan, Silver Sable, Hulkling, Goliath, Speed, and Novar. Wiccan, of course, we're dealing with him over in Marvel Future Fight, as he is part of the new specials, or what they could call a chapter over there. And he's not bad. I think he's a slow burn. I believe in his potential because one of his abilities is just a huge AoE that's everywhere on the ground. And it seems like there's no way out of it, but he's not in a power position right now. Silver Sable would have been cool. I believe she had some involvement with Cable, if I remember correctly. Hulkling we have in Marvel Future Fight, and is Wiccan's boyfriend. Goliath, which I think would have essentially been one of Pym's characters, but spread out as his own entity. And Speed and Novar. Not too familiar with the last two, really. For Lockboxes, it's looking like for PvP 33, we would have finally gotten Yondu as a lockbox. Toad in 35, Blob in 37, Mystique in 40, Scar in 41, and then finally Nebula. So we have some classic Brotherhood of Evil Mutants here and Guardians of the Galaxy people. Now, Yondu has been good in his past. He was part of the original Guardians of the Galaxy, so that's not a surprise. Nebula has been a very popular crossover. We did deal with her in Marvel Avengers Alliance 2. She was very popular in the mobile Guardians of the Galaxy game called The Secret Weapon, which is not available anymore, but if you Google around it, you can find out about it. Of course, her role in the movie, and Nebula is often represented as her movie iteration. So it's not surprising to see Yondu, and not really that surprising to see Nebula because she's been crossing over everywhere else. Toad, Blob, and Mystique. This is the thing that they claim they were never going to do in the game. If they stole Mystique and made her good after yanking Magneto, after yanking Sabretooth, they said that the Brotherhood would have nobody left, and that their older stories in the game would be so ridiculously out of place, but people really wanted Mystique. I don't know that anybody clamored for Blob and Toad. We all, like, as a collective community, fucking hated Toad when we had to deal with him, even in the sim. Blob would have made a very interesting tank, especially if he retained that, like, 0 damage for a few rounds to physical stuff. Might have been a Scourge for PvP defense. Blob probably would have had like an always-on counter or an always-on chance to counter. And Mystique, man, that could have been amazing. She probably would have had 1,000 bullets as something kick combo with maybe a chance to stun on combo setup. Interesting. And of course Scar too. Supposedly, also coming up were more alternate uniforms. So a movie Doctor Strange, no surprise there. A all-new, all-different run with X-23 and Spider-Woman. Daredevil Netflix, classic Adam Warlock, and Netflix Iron Fist when he comes out. It would have been interesting to see what they could have done with Iron Fist, that's for sure. Taking Spider-Woman out of Kurth. Risky, risky venture. Very, very risky. Unless something came along that really knocked the worthy down, to give you an alt for a character that is rather universally going in a certain direction is surprising. It's like, here is this Ferrari that you've been using for years. So I'm going to give you a little bit of I'm going to give you a Yugo with no roof so that when it rains you get wet. But, you know, you can use it if you want. That's what it seems like with Spider-Woman there. It's risky if they go that route. So, alright, now let's talk about the potential legitimacy of... Oh, wait. We missed a couple here. I'm sorry. Special Operations. Clea, or Klee. And we would have been dealing with villains of Caesalis and Shemagaroth. Scarlet Spider, which I believe is Ben Reilly, maybe? A villain in Solus, a guy called Triton, along with Tiger Shark and Wraith. Oya with Silver Samurai. There he is, folks. I knew I saw him somewhere in this. Lady Deathstrike. Yes, fucking yes. Yes. Silver Samurai, Lady Deathstrike. Would have been awesome. Ogun Ryu. Doc Samson with Flux, Radioactive Man, and Scar. Aisha with Karath, Titus, and Tanalith. Did we get Tanalith in Marvel Avengers Alliance 2 as one of the hammer wielders? I forget. We would have had general release heroes of Hazmat, Moonglow, Stature, Sunspot, Echo, and 3D Man. And, okay, so... First thing I'm going to do is deal with the people that I'm going to admit I don't know, and you can flame me if you want. Caesalis, Sholus, don't know those guys. I do know Tiger Shark and Wraith. Not really familiar with Ogun Ryu, or Flux, or Karath Titus, and maybe Tanalith. I think I know who that one is. Not really familiar with these guys other than Sunspot. Over here, not too familiar with Black Swan. Not really that aware of Black Swan, but I know pretty much all the others. Speed, I know a lot of people talk about Speed, but I'm not that familiar with him. Everybody over here, and that's about it. So, let's talk, let's cue up the X-Files theme here and talk about the legitimacy of this information. Could this have been plausible as, like, you know, if the game continued, would this have really come true? My guess is yes. And here's why. It doesn't cater to super fan favorites that we've been clamoring for, like Silver Surfer and Namor. You know, if I had seen that over here, that probably would have ruined it all. I would have been like, ha, 6 months, you know, 6 months away from April Fool's. It's the April Fool's 180 over here. But it doesn't cater to that. So that makes me think this would have been legitimate. We are seeing a lot of crossover to the other Marvel games, including 2, with things like Tiger Shark and Wraith, and we're dealing with some Guardians of the Galaxy, and supposedly we are getting another Guardians of the Galaxy movie. These general releases, I mean, a lot of them are people that I don't know, so I don't know how popular they are. And then here we are dealing with All New, All Different, which has been pretty popular, especially Marvel Future Fight. Daredevil-related things, and Punisher and Elektra. Very, very surprising dips with Falcon. Another suit for Cyclops. Storm, Iron Man's Marvel Now. Very, very interesting choices over here. This is everything that we're, you know, we got White Tiger, and we got Songbird, and now we're kind of covering everything else that was dealt with in Marvel Future Fight and Wiccan and Hulkling. We already had Squirrel Girl, so that's a thing. Now, obviously, we don't have Gwenpool in the game, but that's another thing that we're dealing with in Marvel Future Fight, all from the most recent big update. But, yeah, wow, Silver Sable, Novar, Speed. Here, you know, for the lockboxes, Yondu, it's kind of hard to classify as a lockbox, because he's never really been bad, but he's kind of portrayed as a little bad, and it was original Guardians of the Galaxy, but I mean, the rest of them certainly fit. And I mean, Mystique, huge fan service there. Everybody's wanted Mystique for a long time. I really would have been curious about the Spider-Woman, but Doctor Strange with the movie makes sense. All New, All Different is very big right now. The Netflix items are very big, because we're dealing with the newest one, like Luke Cage. That's a surprise to me. Nothing in reference to Luke Cage's Netflix. Maybe because he's happening now, and they didn't get a chance. They didn't have a chance to plan to the more immediate things. But maybe, like, there could have been a hoodie Luke Cage in there. I don't know how different he would have been from stock Luke Cage, to be honest. Other than maybe, like, takes no damage from gun attacks, or has a chance to reduce gun attacks to 0 damage and take no debuffs from it. But they probably would have felt it wouldn't have been very different. But then again, if they're taking that risk with Spider-Woman, they certainly could have taken the risk with Luke Cage. X-23, there's definitely a lot of variants to X-23 out there. I could see that. Warlock, I mean, that goes to show you, with the fact that we are dealing with other people involved with, like, White Tiger and everything from Marvel Future Fight, that means I think they really did plan for White Tiger and Adam Warlock to be as powerful as they were. I don't think they just dumped us with Mega Gods because the game was ending. I think that's how they intended those characters to be released. Especially if there's going to be an alternate suit for him. The other possibility is that could say, well, this is just like, this is a red herring, it's fan service. over here. There's no way Warlock and White Tiger could have lived in the PvP meta. They would have been too powerful. So this is bullshit. I can understand that thought. And this certainly gives a little bit of credence to it. But I don't know. I think this was, in terms of like Mythbusters, how they do plausible, confirmed, and like denied or whatever it was, or the bullshit. I think this was, obviously we can never say confirmed, the game is gone, but I would say all of this stuff would be highly plausible, and there's a lot of things that I would have been so excited about. So as I wrap up the video, I'll tell you the things I would have been excited about. Over here, Silver Samurai, Lady Deathstrike. A lot of the rest of these I'm just not familiar with. I know a lot of people know Scarlet Spider and Clea. She's in Marvel Heroes. And we might be dealing with her in Marvel Future Fight pretty soon. Moving on. Not too much. I'm not that familiar with most of these general release heroes other than Sunspot, which could have been cool. Which means that, God, I still want Firestar. Would have still wanted Firestar in that game. Shadowlands Elektra would have been pretty cool. Shang-Chi. Or as I like to call him, the Bruce Lee Iron Fist, or Bruce Fist. An alt for Medusa, I would have been interested. Red Hulk General, I'm just very, very curious for that one. Balder, interested to see what they would have done with Classic Falcon. Living Laser. Then moving on, another alt for Cyclops could have been interesting. Fucking Rhino and Hobgoblin, just absolutely yes. Very interested to see if this Yellow Jacket pin was like MA2's one with the yellow and the black. Marvel Now Magneto might have brought him back to power. Another alt for Moon Knight, which could have been cool. Potentially stabilized him. Uncanny Storm would have been nice. Not really that interested too much in Iron Man Marvel Now. As for these heroes, wasn't Luke Cage called Power Man at some point? Or am I just dreaming? These guys, Wiccan would have been interesting. Fucking Silver Sable. Yeah. Goliath. And then over here, definitely Mystique. Also a little bit Scar. And Nebula could have been interesting. I bet you she would have dealt with like a lot of shock attacks and probably some stuns. But yeah, Mystique, definitely. So guys, let me know what you think about what we potentially were missing down in the comments below. I know it might be sad to see all this amazing stuff and realize we'll never get to experience it. But, you know, hey, at least we're still talking about the game to some degree. So let me know what you think. Peace out.